Hey YouTube, it's Dimitri, and today we're doing a very exciting book review. Today we're reviewing The Creative Act, A Way of Being by Rick Rubin. So for those of you that don't know, this is an awesome book. I'm a huge fan of Rick Rubin. I was a DJ when I was much younger. I have a interesting connection to the music. I don't know. I love music. There's a huge part of me that really loves music, and loves music across almost every genre. I've listened to music, oldies, rock, heavy metal, rap, hip hop, a lot of like eclectic, I don't know how to put it, acousticy type of music. Howie Day is one of my favorite artists, for those of you that are not aware. I like his style. He plays a lot of his music solo, so I've seen him live, I think 2-3 times. He does live performances and actually plays and does the beats and records them and loops them and does this full process. But anyways, today we're going to talk about this act, and I think this is critically important for quants because I've been in this spot where I feel like I've got the yips. So if you don't know what the yips are, it's like when an athlete has, all-star athlete has they're like in the zone, they're performing at the top, and then all of a sudden something just happens. Like they just can't do it anymore. They can't perform. They're not hitting, those peaks they used to hit. Like imagine you're a pitcher and you're used to strike everybody out, and then something happens. Something's off in you. Like you're in your head, something's wrong, and you can't get it figured out. This book will help you actually get out of this funk, I think, a bit. So I've always wanted a book that like speaks to you, that's kind of like the chicken noodle soup for the quant soul. And this book is the book, I think, that does this for me. It really speaks to me in many ways. Quantitative finance is one of those odd things where it's partially scientific. We think a lot about the quantitative rigor, but there's a lot of it that is artistic. There's a lot of it that's drawing on your knowledge base, your tools, and more importantly, your logic and your thinking and your process. So your process is going to be absolutely critical. And to give you perspective on this, I was arguing with the manager because it drives me insane. Trying to explain that you can have the same problem and the same data, and you can take two individuals at the same company, and you can have them build you a model to solve that problem, and they will both come up with different models. Okay? They might use the same type of models, but they're going to have different variables, and they're going to have different estimates, and the structure is going to be done differently. It's just how it functions and operates. There's an artistic, creative piece to this process here. And there's a range in the modeling space here, and I think this book is critical, and I'll get into the book here in a second. But when you get into the model development space, there's a varying degree of what we're trying to do here. Like, are we trying to build the world's best model possible, and there's no absolute constraints on this? This is the artistic process. This is going through the tools, exploring the options, looking at different methodologies. And it's really getting involved heavily into the work here. So you can imagine this as like an artist, whether you're a painter or a musician. I think a painter is probably more easy to understand here. But imagine you have this big blank canvas and you're going to create the world's best painting. And there's some general guidelines given to you. But you have a lot of freedom to run and roam and try different sorts of styles and exploration with this. And you're really getting into the process, and you're trying out different color palettes and different types of brush. Maybe you're going from oil to acrylic. There's different things you're trying. You're really getting into this process. And a lot of these parts of the book, so these are just Rick Rubin's thoughts here on kind of the artistic creative process. One of these things was just showing up. It's just showing up for the day and going through the motions, right? There's going to be times when you just don't feel like doing it anymore, and you just have to go through this process. You need to come and have your space, your atmosphere. Sometimes you need to break that space. You need to have something new, something different to look at. For me, that is the model development process when you're on the far side of creativity, coming up with the best thing possible. There's no constraints, there's no timelines. You're really working through and trying different things. And so in the artistic painting example here, it's as if you pull out your favorite brushes, your favorite oil-based paint, whatever your style is, and you paint. Maybe you're a realist in the painting space and you paint and you do a painting and you go, this is awesome. I spent months doing it. I don't know if it's the best though. And so then you set that aside. You say, I'm going to do watercolor. right? Completely different. Maybe you're going to do more of like, I don't know, an art, like a cartoonish anime style. Like you're trying something completely different. You're getting out of your habits here and you try something different. This is how the model development process works when there's no constraints, because what a lot of you don't realize is quants, there's lots of math, there's lots of stats, there's lots of theories, there's lots of things we just don't get to try and do because unfortunately we are not on the full end of the artistic spectrum. We are often much, much closer to the let's get it done as fast as possible, make a buck, and let's move on. We don't care how good it is. It sounds very callous to say that. I know the business is like, well, of course I want the world's best model. It's like, no, you really don't. And be far too expensive, and we get off into fairyland often in the quant space, exploring new ideas and coming up with things that perhaps aren't going to have any value. And I think that's what this book it does as well, is it talks about the artistic process of just making to make. And I think that's what happens with a lot of the times the model development is you have this pressure where you're looking at, I could make something, but I don't know if we're going to get something of value out of that process, that model here. And as we go back on that spectrum here, the realistic world of maximizing profits and dollars and everything, I can tell you it is far easier to create a cookie cutter out of the box model that just easy to make, easy to explain, goes through simple standard processes. It's what everybody else is doing. And you just generate the mass production because you need to get something in place here. And that is going to be kind of just going through the motions with this. And this is what kills your soul as a quant. And I think this is what's broken me in many ways. It's giving me the yips here. I can't get out of it. And so I'm actually, as Project Phoenix, making a lot of changes. But the thing I love about this book, so this book it looks thick. It's a really fast read because it has a few writings on a page, and then you turn it and you read a page or two, and then all of a sudden there's a little statement or a summary or a saying from the book, and then all of a sudden you're on to the next section here, and you're just cooking through this book because there's really not a lot to it here. But I loved the book. It really spoke to me in the way of understanding how the process of model development is. And again, there is that spectrum here. So you're not always going to be grinding and churning out models. You might be on the creative spectrum of this. But I think the book, it helps explain, it helps relate the process and the being of doing the quant and the artistic work here. I can say this book is especially helpful for those of you that are late career. Early career, I don't know how much, I think it'll be an interesting read if you're early career, to be honest with you guys. I actually plan on going back and reading this a second or third time at least. So not recently, but I'm going to go through some life here, go through some more turbulence, and I think I'm going to come back and just start perusing through the book because I've already read through it. But it gives you these tidbits of how to not care as much, how to let the universe kind of flow through you. And I know this seems insane, but yes, I do think and agree with Rick Rubin in many ways that a lot of times great and beautiful art and ideas and processes are channeled through the universe in ways we don't understand, we're never going to understand. But being open to thinking and processing and listening. I have not been able to do this in a long time. And a lot of this book of discussing the artistic, journey and the process in creating quality work is something very, very important to this book here. So this book, I'm going to give a 5 out of 5 stars. Absolutely love this book. I'm a huge Rick Rubin fan on top of that. But to be honest, if he wrote a garbage book, I would just tell you it's a garbage book and I wouldn't have mentioned I read it. But I really like the book. I really like the thought process. I like the external view of Rick Rubin of trying to take yourself out of your current stance and position, not focusing so much on the here and the now, in the fact of you're worried and stressed and hitting deadlines and everything. It's more or less the artistic perspective, and it speaks, I think, to many of us older quants. But I think this book would be amazing for those of you that are older in a career, because it really kind of relates with a lot of the frustration of you realize you read it and you're like, yes, this gets me. This understands how things should be in the quant space. This is how I need to change my life to be happier, to make things more functional. I also think this is an amazing book for managers on building out quant teams here. So if you're a quant, not a quant, whatever, if you're running a team of quants, I would highly recommend reading this. in pulling yourself out of your own head and your own understanding and your own insights, and think through this book as like you have a team of artists. They're not quants, they're not math people, they're not logical. You have a team of artists sitting underneath of you, and you're asking them to generate art. And then read this book with that perspective. I think you will come up with much, much better ways to manage your team of quants. I think you will understand their struggles and frustrations. So one of these things I've heard over the years many times is like teams will say, we can't keep quants on, everyone's quitting, we just don't know how to get them. And then I'm like, well, how much research are they doing, and how many textbooks do we provide, and like, are we really getting into the the academic rigor? And the companies always say, no, that's a waste of time, but I paid the guy 30% more. And I'm like, yeah, they want a rigorous mental challenge. They want something rewarding and exciting. Like, they want that exploration, artistic process of flow. They want to get into the zone with it. And unfortunately, you can't obviously do that when you're head down trying to maximize the dollar for the firm. You need to have a little bit of flexibility, and oddly enough, that makes quants happy. You keep them, you save money, and then they stick around. So turnover's low, comp can be lower. Don't grind them out and kill them. It drives me insane. But I think this book would do an amazing job at that. Highly recommend the book. I'll put a link in the description below. If you have read this book, I would love to hear your comments as well, what you think. If you go and buy the book and you read the book, come back here to this video and put your comments below. Let me know what you think. Am I crazy? Did you like the book? Maybe there's some points I missed. Maybe it spoke to you differently. Let me know in the comments below. And as always, until next time.